Question for you. Are you ready to take your instructional design skills to the next level? Come join us for the 8th cohort in Instructional Design Institute. In our Instructional Design Fundamentals course, you'll learn how to make learning experiences meaningful, relevant, and, of course, interesting. We cover topics like andragogy, backward design, learning strategies, UDL, generative AI, because of course, we have to talk about that nowadays, and evaluation methods. You'll receive weekly feedback and can attend optional live sessions to join your fellow learning nerds. You'll also walk away too knowing how to create a robust portfolio and copies of my ebook. Go down below inside of the show notes to apply for the next cohort that starts on Monday, October 13th. Can't wait to see you there. And now, let's start the show. Hello, learning nerds, and welcome on in to the nerdiest podcast you're going to hear today. My name is Dr. Luke Hobson. I'm an author, blogger, podcaster, instructor, and, of course, an instructional designer. And my purpose is to be able to help you learn more about instructional design, how to design meaningful, relevant, and interesting types of learning experiences. And, of course, you can find all of the resources that I have for you over at drlukehobson.com. When I think of instructional design, I think of 5 different pillars. We have learning design, technology, research, relationship management, working with subject matter experts, and then we have project management. And I would argue that this is the area that does not get as much attention as it really should. But why? We obviously manage projects. We have to think about deliverables and deadlines and staying on budget and trying to make sure that we're on task for everything. But it doesn't come up that much with different types of teachings, videos, and a bunch of other different types of resources. Even right now, if you Google books on project management for instructional design, not many actually show up. However, that has changed recently, and we are going to be hearing from our friend, Dr. Guieswende Rouamba, who wrote a really interesting book about project management for instructional designers called The Instructional Designer's Guide to Project Management. He is also an instructional designer at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, and overall, he is just a wealth of knowledge about all of these different types of areas, and I invited him on the show to talk more about his book and to talk about project management and the impact this can have for you as an instructional designer, and trying to be able to take away some of the tips from this episode and go and apply it immediately into what you do. So, with all of that being said, I'm not going to waste any more time. Here is the one and the only Dr. Guieswende Rouamba. Guieswende, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Luke.
Of course, my pleasure. And I cannot wait to dive in more into everything with your book and what you have going on in instructional design land. But before that I get ahead of myself, could you please introduce yourself to the audience and tell us more about who you are and what is it that you do?
Again, thank you. And I want to start by saying that you have a fantastic book, and I encourage seasoned and new instructional designers to go and read your book because it's a fantastic one.
I did not pay you to say that, but I thank you very much for saying that.
So, for my background, I grew up in Burkina Faso. It's a French-speaking country in West Africa, where my father was a university professor, and he studied abroad in England, and that sparked my dream also to study abroad. But my journey to studying abroad was not easy. I was first rejected from Ohio State University because I didn't understand the application process in the United States. But I kept on going, and I was accepted at West Virginia University, where I taught French as a graduate teaching assistant, and I also earned 2 master's degrees, one in French and foreign languages, and the other one in healthcare and public and healthcare administration. With the dream to work for NGOs or nonprofit companies. But unfortunately, that did not work. I couldn't secure a job in those sectors. Then my wife suggested that I look into instructional design. At that time, I had no idea what instructional design was. So I'm glad that I listened to her, and that shifted my whole career. And I went and then earned a PhD in instructional design. And then I realized that that PhD actually combines my love for teaching, uh, technology, and also learning. So today I am a learning designer at the Guise College of Business at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. I have over a decade of experience working with great universities like the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, Notre Dame, and Purdue. I enjoy working with faculty to design courses that are meaningful and impactful, but I also love working with my fellow instructional designers to try to find ways so that we can support one another. And that's what led me to write the book, The Instructional Designer's Guide to Project Management.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing. So now the fact that I just learned that you can also speak French, the only French thing that I can say that is still embedded in my head, by the way, is because of a 90s television commercial that was called, was it Muzzy, that was trying to teach kids how to speak. And I remember I kept on seeing this commercial every single time about this little girl who was saying, like, Je suis la jeune fille, for like, I'm a little girl, was like in the commercial, which I think is what it roughly translates to. And that's still in my head. Like even now, at 37, I can still remember that commercial. So I have no idea if I said that correctly, but of course I had to share that. The other thing, though, how did your wife know about instructional design?
Mhm.
No, it's interesting. Yeah, how did she know about it?
She was doing her PhD in education, in cultural studies education, and then she was taking classes with other people who are doing instructional design. And then one night she came at home and she was like, "Have you heard about instructional design and technology?" I'm like, "No, I have no idea what that field is." And she's like, "You definitely need to look into that because I know you love technology and you have the teaching background. You will love that field." I'm like, okay. So I went and started Googling and meeting people to talk about it. And I mean, it was the perfect fit for me.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Oh, it's so cool. It's always so interesting to me to hear about how people actually found out about the field and hearing from loved ones to say like, you might be a good fit as an instructional designer. It's like, yeah, okay, sure, maybe. Yeah, that's cool, man. That's awesome to hear. Well, you mentioned about your book. That's why you're here today. We got to talk about it because you wrote a fantastic book, The Instructional Designer's Guide to Project Management. And to me, this is something that is missing in our field because I have read other books about project management and such. And to be honest, many are boring. Yeah, it is a cold hard truth where I'm just like it's such a slog to read this, but like okay. And then when you mentioned to me that you're writing this book and I was able to get my hands on it, it was simple, it was effective, and you wrote it in such a really unique way. So, what actually inspired you to want to write this book in the first place?
Yeah. So the first thing is that I realized that there was a gap in the field. So let's look at let's do some kind of little research on it. So if we search on Amazon, one of the biggest platform for books, there are only two books that truly talks about project management and instructional design. One of them is Agile by Project Manage, Agile for Project Management for Instructional Designers, sorry, by Megan Torrance, and the other one is ID Project Management by Michael Greer. That was written in 1994, so 30 years ago. So if we go and search on Google, we will find, I think, two open education textbooks on that topic and smaller articles. If we go on the on academic databases and we look at like ProQuest and others, there are some dissertations and also articles that talk about project management. But the problem is they only talk about the issue and don't teach us about project management.
Mm.
So that was eye opening for me. Like, oh my goodness, we need there is a big gap in here. So I was happy a little bit, and also like, okay, why people are not writing about it? So, but I realized that the gap is not only in the literature, but also in practice. most instructional design programs at universities don't teach about project management. I hold a PhD in instructional design. From a great university. I studied learning theories and practices, and I had awesome, training, but I never took a single course on project management. Yet what we do every single day is manage project. So, and also the reason why I wrote it is for personal reasons, because burnout, right? I've been there working weekends, late nights, and I was like, there should be a better way for me to work in instructional design. And one of my friend, Michael Tingery, very smart guy, recommended in the past that I look into project management. I'm like, nah, our field is big enough. I don't need to look into it, something else. But it was eye-opening for me when I started learning about project management, because it helped me better plan and deliver courses on time and have more time for myself. So that's the reason why I wrote the book. And you mentioned that, I'm glad you said that the book was simple enough and also accessible. And that's one of the reasons I wrote it, to be short and concise, because nowadays, it's not easy to spend 4 or 5 hours reading a book. So I wanted something simple, that people can read in 1 or 2 hours and be able to take some principles and apply it right away. So I didn't want to just write another academic paper that will sit on shelves.
Right.
So, but those are the reasons why I wrote the book and the style that I chose to
And
write the
it's
book in.
And I'm not sure if you found it challenging to be able to write in a more simplistic manner, because, like, as academics, you're like, oh, I have to include 7,000 references and I must do it like this scholarly type of a way. But then when you're thinking about it, you're like, well, no, I actually want a lot of people to read this book. I shouldn't be going in this direction of like just writing a traditional white paper, which is what I appreciated that when I was reading this book, because I wasn't sure. As soon as I got my hands on it, I was like, I don't know which direction you're going to go into. But as I'm looking at it, and I was just like, oh, this is interesting, because you wrote it in this type of in a narrative storytelling sense, where, like, yes, you do talk about the fundamentals and such, but at the same time, there was characters, and you're thrusted into this world of Bob, who is a newly appointed manager of his different type of team, and then Bob has to deal with anyone who has tried to be able to go into a situation where you're becoming a manager of an already formed team, that people have perceptions, they already have their own ways of doing things, and now as their new type of leader, you're trying to be able to take things in a different direction, and you naturally have people who push back, like George in our case, where I was getting really angry reading the book, where I'm like, I know these people who are so resistant to change, and they try to actually undermine you and go behind your back, and you're like, those people do exist. But I love how you wrote it in that type of style. What made you want to write it actually in a way of like a real story that's so unique? I haven't seen that from like anything else in instructional design land.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. The one of the things that you said that really, it was important for me is I didn't want to add any reference inside my book beside the end, like at the end, like citation and stuff like that. I wanted to be simple story. Even the first part, which is kind of a little bit about the psychology and stuff like that, I didn't want to cite directly inside. But people can go to the references and see the different books and articles that I use. The reason why I wrote it this way, there are 2 or 3 main reasons. First, storytelling. I grew up in Burkina Faso in West Africa, and storytelling has been part of my life. I remember my parents and my grandparents listening to stories from them, and stories has a way to captivate us in a way that dry explanations cannot simply do. So that was, for me, an easy way to convey a message, that can be complicated, but using a story makes it simple for people to learn about the message, project management. Secondly, as an instructional designer, I know that people learn best when they are in real world scenarios or authentic learning. So that's the reason why I try to replicate like the office setting of an instructional design office so that people can relate to anything that goes inside there because that's what they're living every single day, the good, the bad, the drama, the politics, and all these things. So try to encapsulate all of that in the story so that it's not only story in some ways, but also people can learn what I'm trying to say. Lastly, with stories, we can have multiple themes inside. So the obvious theme is about project management, but the underlying theme you touch on it is about leadership. I wanted to incorporate leadership traits like empathy, clarity, support, courage. And those are traits that instructional designers need because, as we know, we sometimes lead without title, right? So we need to know those traits to be able to be good leaders when we are designing online courses or when we are designing courses.
It's not even sometimes we lead without title. It's all the time. It's all the time we lead without title, especially for working with tenured faculty and for very senior stakeholders and everything. It's it's always that type of an uphill challenge at times for things. So it makes plenty of sense from that type of perspective. So let's talk about project management, as this is literally the theme around your book. When I think about project management and what I've kind of like perceived over the years is that it's almost kind of seen as like a nice to have, if you will, which is really crazy when you think about, because to me, there are really 5 pillars of instructional design, if you will, is that like what makes up an instructional designer? Well, we know about learning science, we know about technology, research, relationship management, and then project management. Like to me, those are the 5 key things that what makes us who we are today. Why is project management though kind of seen as like a bonus? Like why is it not talked about as much and why is it overlooked?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think the first simplest answer is because our field focuses on teaching and learning, and our field is so big already. But so that anything outside of that field is considered bonus. That's what I realized. Second, I think project management is not part of our curriculum. I mean, like most instructional design programs at universities don't teach about project management. And we're still preparing the students as if they're going to be all professors and researchers. But most of us actually end up in instructional design field where we manage courses, juggle different stakeholders, and then navigate scope creep. So this is the reality. It's not part of our curriculum. And lastly, it's overlooked because project management is misunderstood by instructional designers. And I was one of them. I used to believe that learning theories and practices were good enough. I don't need project management. I mean, like, why it's not taught in my curriculum? This is good enough. But what I realized is that project management opened my eyes to the project side of instructional design, which is different than instructional design because we have instructional design, RD, and all these theories. Then we have the project side that need to complement instructional design. And when we start using the project side, the project to help with instructional design, then we start to plan better, like little less burnout, and then we can deliver courses on time. So I think those are the reasons why I think it's usually overlooked.
It's interesting how when people think about creating different types of courses and learning experiences that they don't call them projects. It's like, but you need to manage your project, which is this. Like, this is now your baby. You're going to work on this. For some of them, it could be years, depending upon what you're actually designing. And there's going to be pitfalls, there's going to be challenges, there's going to be potential budget issues or pushing things back for your timeline. Like, I don't know. It's the same as what you were just saying, that when I was studying about instructional design, project management kind of never came up. And then you get thrusted into the role and you're like, oh, I'm managing people. I'm managing projects. Like, okay, this is not just talking about all the things that I thought I was going to be diving on into. It's much more in this type of manner. Are there any types of project management strategies that you find really resonate with instructional designers in particular, that if we saw something, we can try to be able to have a easier time adopting that into what we do?
Yes, I would say the first thing is the process itself. When we look at project management process and RD process, they're kind of similar. RD, we have analyze, design, development, implementation, and evaluation. In project management, we have also similar process: initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, and closing. So it's kind of easier for instructional designers to adopt project management. The only difference is that, again, instructional design is about learning and project management is about workflow, but how we manage the project. So it's easier for the instructional designers to adopt project management.
When we're thinking about the projects too and trying to use different types of processes and whatnot, I know that one of the things that has always been a known thing that I was going to have to do with every SME that I've worked with in the past is kind of explain about my process, to be able to say, especially from if I'm going to be talking about ADDIE or backward design or whatever we're going to be going on into, it's always trying to make sure that they're kind of kept inside of the loop to know about, hey, this is the journey we're going to go on. And then this is why I'm doing this thing. This is why I'm organizing this meeting. This is why we're going to be doing, just to try to be able to make them more informed about things. And then, of course, you the project management side. And it's not like you go into being like, oh, well, here's why I do XYZ from a project management perspective. But obviously, you're doing that in the background, which is all to say that collaboration with subject matter experts is crucial, because it's not just you obviously working on your project. And you touched upon this in the book, which I was so happy to see that right away you mentioned about subject matter experts. And I was like, oh, thank you so much for saying that, because there's so much that I've read that kind of makes the instructional designer seem like a team of one and that they don't work with anybody. And I'm like, well, there's cases of that, but that's rarer, I would say, in our line of work. How have you developed your different your different types of best practices when it comes to working with subject matter experts, trying to build out that collaboration, build out those relationships? What have you found that have worked for you over the years?
Yes, I would say I start by human relationships. Like, we need to spend time really, like, genuinely trying to connect with the SMEs. I mean, it's hard to work with someone we don't know. We rather work with someone we know. That's plain and simple. So my first meeting, usually it's like really low key meeting where we talk about the instructor, like background, like teaching style, background, research interests, my hobbies, his or her hobby, like what if she want to talk about those things. But those early connection creates a psychological safety. So later on, if there's an issue, the SME is open to come and tell me, like, oh, actually, uh, you remember we talked about the research, my research, I have to submit it this week. So I won't be able to deliver it on time. So those are the kind of like connection and relationship that we need to have at the beginning that makes it easier later on for people to open up and talk really about the project and how we can collaborate. Secondly, we need instructional designers to clarify roles and expectations. And this has been a big struggle for me because conflict usually comes from unclear roles and expectations. Like, I may assume that the SME is going to do the heavy lifting on the content, and the SME may be assuming that it's me. So we need to clarify those at the beginning of the course so that everyone knows what they're gonna do, their role expectation early, so it's clear. So, and that can help down the road create not only stronger relationship and also avoid like frustrations and tensions. Lastly, we need to communicate often. I say that because I've been there. Sometimes I know the due date and then I wait like on the due date, like the due date of the content, and then I message the SME, hey, the content is due today, or you should have sent me the content a couple of weeks ago. And then I mean like it's tough. So what we need to do is send like reminders, to send, I would say, check-ins. Like, it doesn't have to be something like super long. I'm just messaging to see how you're doing on the content and those kind of things. And those small check-ins can help. I mean, it's kind of also a gentle reminder for them, like, oh, hey, you gotta work on this one because it's due in 1 or 2 weeks. So those are the kind of things that I think help build like a strong relationship, and then also shows that we care about the cause or the training. And faculty or SMEs usually gravitate around people who have those, I would say, traits or um, tips to keep them on track.
Love them. And the worst thing that I hate hearing when joining a project, and there's like, let's say there's multiple instructional designers working on something, which I've been a part of those before. But whenever someone says like, let's jump right in, and it goes like immediately to drafting learning objectives, and I'm like, no, wait, no, stop, wait. It's just like, oh my gosh. I mean, as you were just saying, if you don't build that relationship first and you don't have that chemistry, then this person is so much more likely to not respond back to you, to quite frankly care, because you don't have that connection. And it doesn't need to be a lot, as you were saying. It can be simple. Like, there have been some professors who, as soon as they told me, like they would come into the office and I asked them, like, how was traffic, driving in. And there was one professor who had a Harley Davidson, and he was just like, never a great day, got to ride my bike. It's like, so every single time I saw him, I was like, hey, how was your bike ride in this morning? Every single time. And he like immediately lit up because he loved talking about his Harley so much.
Yeah.
Same thing if they tell me about their favorite sport, or the fact that if they say that their kid is into like this type of activity and that they're going to this like hockey practice or whatever it is, I'm like, I will forever remember that. Of just like, that is now my thing that we will talk about to make sure that I'm listening and that I care, and that we go back and forth.
Yes.
And you can't overlook that.
Yes. Like your example all like made me think about another example that I have. Like, recently I was working on the course. Actually, I'm working on the course now, and the faculty loves tennis. So we talk about US Opens, and then he's like, oh, actually, one of the cases in the course can be about US Opens. And he's doing like just the conversation of getting to know each other, like, led to actually an assignment that is applicable, because now the US Open just finished, but it's still, like, a good topic to talk about.
Absolutely. That's all that it takes to be able to do. And then once you have that, and now that you're going to be talking about tennis for the rest of your life with this person as long as you work with them. But now that you also have that chemistry and that bond and everything else, then you don't feel so annoying, especially from a project management perspective, of how often you were saying that you check in. Like, I check in with some folks every day. It's like, if we have a tight deadline and I'm not hearing from you, I will send you an email. The next day, well, I haven't heard back from you, I'm going to call you. Well, I'm going to text you. And like, it walks that border of like, I'm kind of annoying, but you know why I'm doing it, because I'm waiting on this from you, and I can't have my team do the rest of the build without, what your share is of this one. And that allows me to definitely really blast some folks' devices without being like, this person is going to hate me for forever, is because of that.
Yes.
But no, well, let's going into that. Speaking of some SMEs never wanting to work with me again, let's talk about conflict for a second for things, because we know that unfortunately, even with some of the best stakeholders and the best SMEs that we have, that inevitably there's gonna be an issue in the project, and then that's gonna come things to a screeching halt, and then so what do you do as far as for you're sensing that something is coming down the pike, you're having this problem, all the warning signs are there, but something's about to pop up. What do you do to try to make sure that the project isn't getting derailed?
Yes. So I would say the first thing, I mean, you mentioned to that for project managers is to sense issues that are coming. So, because if you then sense issues that are coming, I mean, like it's gonna derail your project when they come. So when I sense that there's an issue, I will weigh and say, is it something? I will try to see where the issue is coming from. If it's coming from the SME, do I need to have an open conversation with it? Or sometimes the issue may be me, myself, right? So how I'm communicating with the faculty may make them not want to do something for some reasons, right? Or the issue may be internal within the team that I'm managing, because like in my case, for example, we have graphic designers, we have videographers, and all these people. So we need to assess the issue and then also look at how we're going to do it. We can use differentiation, for example. Try to figure out what's the 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 key issue before jumping into conclusion. That's what I call by differentiator. So sometimes the issue can be masked with a lot of things around, but until we peel all the layers and find the source of the issue, we won't be able to resolve it. And once we have that, now it depends on the type of relationship we have with the faculty. Sometimes we don't have a good relationship. It can be we're gonna have to walk the tough line communication and then be like, oh, true that we don't have a relationship, but we still need to talk about it and mean like man up and then just talk about it. If we have a good relationship, like as you said, hey, simply email can resolve the issue, or we can also jump on the call. But I think most of the time, not I think, having also a call is easier than just emails, because we know emails can be misunderstood or interpreted different ways. Or if we have like a meeting with the design team, so these are also opportunities for us to talk about uh, issues in a gentle way, not blaming. One thing also I would say is blaming others. That's easy route that we can all take, but it's asking questions when there's an issue. I feel that it's easier for me to ask like, oh, let's assume that the issue is about content not being delivered, tension. I'll be like, did we give you enough time to develop the content? Those kind of questions doesn't blame. Or is there anything that we didn't provide that would have supported you to give the content on time? Like those are the kind of questions that I ask, and it helps a lot with resolve tensions.
I do the same thing all the time. One of the questions that I ask is to help me understand. So help me
Ooh.
understand what's blocking you from doing what's happening from the like, so try to be able to kind of dive in further. And when you say it as in like, I'm trying to learn more, so inform me about what's going on, they want to share with you, where truthfully, I want to be like, hey man, you are really messing things up. Like, I've been waiting for weeks. Where are you? What are you doing? Kind of a thing. But when you say it in a more professional manner, it's certainly going to be in a bit of a received in a better way from that type of perspective. But I'd like to dive in then even further into this, because you mentioned before about scope creep. We have shifting deadlines, which are an issue. We have poor communication. We were just talking about can be an issue for things. What's a type of like of a practical tool or a strategy for folks trying to get back on track and to avoid these types of pitfalls?
Yes. So I will say that if you haven't done it and you already start your design, try to go back and do a scope document. It's so important in project management. The scope, like scoping document. The scoping document serves kind of like the blueprint. It includes stakeholders. This is so important. We need to know who are the key people that can move the project forward or not. So I made that mistake in the past, design a course with a SME and didn't check with the program director. And then at the end, the program director was like, nah, this is not what I expected from the course. And what happened? The course didn't get launched. So, effort, time wasted. Anyway, so the scoping document talks about stakeholders, responsibilities, deliverable, timelines, milestone, communication, and constraints. Like, like there are constraints in every project. For example, which elements are we going to, no, like in the elements, which tools are we going to use, right? Are we going to use third party tools? All these things are constraints, like resources and all. So we need to talk about those. Are they going on vacation? Right? These are constraints that affect the project. So we lay out all these things in the blueprint and we discuss it. We discuss them with the faculty. And sometimes like faculty love doing that because they think that, oh wow, this guy really cared about the project. He wanted succeed. Look at all these questions he's asking, and even make the faculty and us think deeply about the project side of instructional design before we even go into design. So if you haven't done it, or I would recommend that you do a scoping document, because also later on, if the faculty comes, or the SME, I usually say faculty because I work with at the higher education. So the SME comes and says, hey, we need to add this, we need to add that. You can point back to the scoping document and be like, oh, let's look at what we agreed on the past based on the timeline and the resources. Is it something that we can really do? And sometimes, like, it can be like, okay, we cannot do it. And the faculty like, oh, actually, that will be a lot of work. We can't do it, right? And then you're already good. But sometimes it can be also scope discovery in that sense that there are some things that always pop up and then you have to address it. So there is no way around that. But we need to start doing scoping documents at the beginning of the course design.
What you just said too helps me to stay under budget. That's always my big thing, is that you're working, as you said, you already agreed upon the details, what you're going to be doing, and then something pops up where they're like, oh, but can we include this article? Can we include this simulation? What about this other thing? And then you're like, well, wait a second, hold on, like let me add up the costs of things. And you're like, oh, like it's like, and of course you want to include those because you know it's going to make the course better. But as you keep on adding up, I'm like, all right, how many articles did we pay for each student? And how many licenses do we need to buy for this new simulation? But we already have another simulation. And now we're like, so that absolutely adds up. And as you were just saying, you can go back to that document to say, here's what we have. So we need to stick with this blueprint for things. And what you said too about not having all the right people in the room, I've also encountered where everything is buttoned up and done. And I'm like, we're good. And like, you go to talk with one other person for a final type of an approval. And they're like, well, wait a minute. Like, did you consult with the blah, blah, blah? Because higher education is all about politics. So you need to make sure you discuss it with somebody else first to get the approval of everything else. And you're like, I didn't know I had to talk to this group first. And they're like, cool, go talk with them. Like, oh no, like it's already done. What are we gonna do? So yeah, been there. It's not fun.
No.
No, it's never fun. You mentioned about burnout earlier too, and I want to make sure that we touch upon that because as instructional designers, you're wearing many, many hats all the time. You're juggling 1,000 projects, you're going above everything else, and you kind of forget about your mental well-being. You just like, I can drink more coffee. I can stay up later. I can wake up earlier, and you kind of keep on going through the motions because you want to get it done because you have your deadlines. You're going to do whatever you can to hit those deadlines. But all the while, the next time you start a project and you're already completely burnt out and just like, well, your next project's not going to go well. You're already ready to collapse for things. How can we use project management to our advantage to help us when it comes to preventing burnout?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are two tools I use all the time. The first one is the MVP approach, the minimum viable product. This is very important for me. The minimum viable product suggests that instead of looking for perfection, we should first aim for a version that is solid, functional, and works well. So let's assume I'm working on the graphic for a course, right? And at some point, when I see that it's solid enough, what I will do is send it to the SME or send it to whoever need to check it. And most or sometimes, my first version is already pretty good. And they'll be like, oh, that's what I needed. So good. Then I move forward, right? But if not, I will stay in that creative loop or spending days and days perfect, like trying to make it perfect. And does it really add value, right? So I live by minimum viable product. And when I send that minimum viable product also, it gives me like a roadmap. I will know that, okay, am I going the right direction? Am I going the wrong direction? So the person can comment and I can improve on that and we can keep on going. So that's one of, like, I would say, key element to avoid burnout because as you know, in our field, we're really creative. We can spend days working on something we want to just keep making perfect. The second one is the critical path approach. And that can help also a lot for burnout. The critical path approach is kind of like the sequence of tasks that must happen for a project to stay on track. Let's take another example, like a video project. We know that there are usually three critical elements in the video project. We need to write the script, we need to record, and we need to edit. But there are other things that are not part of the critical path, such as polishing backgrounds, polishing music, uh, refining the on-screen text, spending days like the B-rolls, searching for B-rolls. It's not easy, adding all these things, but they're not part of the critical path. So for me, if I'm really in a tight deadline, I will go with the critical path. What do I need in terms of minimum valuable product to get it to the SME or get it to the person that needs it? So those two things have been very helpful for me.
Mm. How do you see these different elements coming more together into our roles? Because one of the things that I was having a conversation with someone about on LinkedIn the other day was that when I first joined MIT, my job title was originally program manager, was an instructional designer. Over time, it then kind of morphed into senior instructional designer program manager. And I had some people comments on a recent job posting at MIT that, once again, instructional designer, program manager, and people were kind of like, why? You have two titles in one. Like, they're different because you need to be able to focus on X versus Y. But also keep in mind, too, that neither of those are project manager. Program manager, because you would manage and oversee the program, onboarding, the hiring, the rerunning, the maintenance, the development, the blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of interesting. And I'm curious from your perspective, as we keep on thinking more about the future in our ever changing world of instructional design, is project management going to have more of an emphasis in what we do? Is it going to evolve? Is it gonna, where do you think this is going to go for our field?
I think we'll do a lot of more project management. And the reason is also because of AI.
Ah, of course. Of course.
Because like uh, project project management in those like in terms of managing having instructional designers and stuff like that, but also project management instead of course design, because we will be able to, I mean, like now, even now, we're able to make courses a little faster because the scripting and all these things, videos can, I mean, like AI is helping a lot on that. So we will have, I think, lesser, hopefully not, less instructional designers, but more portfolios to manage because of what AI is now enabling us to do. So we will we will have to manage more courses and be more like a portfolio managers of wide range of courses. That's where I see that our field will be moving towards a lot.
That's interesting. Have you tried using something with AI to be able to create like a different type of a scoping document compared to like what you're doing right now to be able to see like what it generates for you from the start?
Yeah. Yes, I've tried, and I mean it keep on getting better, and it's sometimes amazing what comes out. I mean, we still need the human element to be able to correct a lot of things, but honestly, sometimes it's amazing what we can get. So even, I mean, like to add that, like I work with people in the video side, and what they can do with videos nowadays in a short amount of time, what they can produce is amazing. So um, AI is, we all know it's gonna be gonna change a lot of things on our field.
Yeah, and definitely want to make sure to emphasize once again the need of humans. We're not getting replaced by robots anytime soon. For all you who are freaking out right now,
Right.
but it can definitely kickstart things. I mean, I even think about if I have. So let's say that you and I are developing a new course together that's starting on October 1st, and we want to be able to have a timeline as far as for like here is our runway, and we have so many different types of deadlines and deliverables that comes with figuring out like the blueprint, the kickoff call, the making sure to have like let's say the different types of learning outcomes done, the objectives, and then like module like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the assessments. Like we have all these different types of pieces and patterns and whatnot that we can incorporate that into using something like with ChatGPT to be able to say, here's all of my elements. Create for me a timeline of we're starting it on October 1st and it's launching on on December 1st. Like let's go create it for me. And like and again, and of course you don't need to use it, you can manipulate it, you can edit it, whatever. But if you have that, as opposed to when I first started, where I just had like a billion Excel spreadsheets, and I'm like, okay, how am I going to make this work? I'm developing 3 different courses right now. I got like 7 different faculty, and like it's so it can give you a helping hands. They really can.
Totally, you spot on. I mean, like I use it every day for my project, and it- as you said, I mean, I can combine later on, look at the timeline, and use my human judgment and be like, oh, that won't be done in 1 week. I would need 2 weeks to do that. But I mean, it will do 50 to 75% of the heavy lifting for us.
Yeah, yeah. It's it's getting more and more helpful by the day, that's for sure.
Yes.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't ask about the I wanted to hear your thoughts around like the leadership elements, because clearly there's a strong emphasis on leadership. You mentioned about that in the book, and then clearly when you read the book, and if you haven't yet, definitely go down to the show notes to be able to go and find a link to the book. But one of the things that as you're reading the journey of Bob and going through in this and seeing about all the struggles of being a first time leader and trying to lead with grace and empathy and not want to like throw things at people for undermining you and all those things. Like there's a strong emphasis on leadership in your book that does tie into how a project does get managed and how it is successful and the team is successful and things like that. And you've been doing this for a while too. What is your advice for up and coming designers who are entry level, who have been doing this for a little bit and they want to grow into a leadership role or go from a senior instructional designer to that next type of a level? What is your piece of advice for folks in our field to grow?
I will selfishly say, buy and read my book first.
Sure. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Because yeah, but I mean, seriously, I mean, I'm not serious, but on the other side, um, as you said, the book has a central figure, which like who is Bob, and what I try to do is Bob is kind of like the dream leader, if we look at it, because he has almost, I would say, all the great characteristics for a good leader, like compassion. You mentioned a lot of them. And those are the traits that if we want to move up ladder, that we need to have. Not only those good leadership characteristics will impact the people around us, but also will show other people above us that we have those traits that can make us good leaders. Because no, I mean, like most of the time, people are looking for good leaders to support them. So if we are really good at leadership, they're gonna, I mean, like promote us and stuff like that. And the second piece I will say is if we look at most leadership instructional design positions, there is a huge component of project management. Sometimes it's 25, 50%, because you're managing a project, you're managing people and stuff like that. So I will encourage people, go beyond my book and take courses on project management, certificates on project management. There are so many of them, right? And then deepen your knowledge on project management. Because also at the end of the day, project management is not only for instructional design, but it's for everyday life. It's a everyday life skill. I use now when I'm have a project at home, I think project management. I'm like, okay, what's the critical path? Am I gonna if I want to clean my garage, I will be like, okay, I'm gonna use the MVP model and then just clean a little bit. I mean, like as long as it's tight and clean, that's good enough. So those are skills. I mean, like project management is a skill that everyone needs. And I think it shouldn't be taught only in business or business schools or engineering school, but it should be taught in all the disciplines because it's, as we've been discussing, it helps with burnout, right? Like getting our time back and all these great things that it can help us do.
And once again, as you were just saying, it reminds me too around the fact that you will always have projects. So as an instructional designer, you have a certain set of projects. And as a senior instructional designer, you have a different type of projects. And now as an assistant director, I have different kinds of projects. So now it's not just like, oh, I get to design the learning experience. It's like, oh no, now I'm actually partly responsible for budgeting and for payroll and for making sure that these my team members are happy and that they're growing and that they're doing well. And you have all these different types of elements that you're like, oh, right, this is now a part of what I do. But there is still learning design involved, but it kind of shifts for things. So what you just said, it's true. Project management is truly applicable to anything.
Yes.
You know, really.
And including strategic project, because the dean can be like, oh, look, I need you to look at this department and then assess this and this and this and give me a report and those kind of, this is a project by itself. And if you don't have like project management skills or cannot ask the right question to the dean, it's going to lead up to burnout because the right question will be like, oh, dean, like, how much time do we have? What success look like for this project? What are the deliverables? What are those kind of questions? You may even help the dean think deeper about the question. And that's if we don't have project management skills, I mean, it's
Yeah,
Yeah, really, really.
taking that step back is really critical. Because I was saying before, people are just like, all right, I'm gonna roll up my sleeves, dive on in. And I'm like, and I appreciate that enthusiasm. I love that. But hold on, we don't have all the information at hand. We're going to be spinning our wheels here and come to find out that like, oh, we missed this or this or this. And it's like, we could have prevented so many things if we had kind of taken a moment to ourselves, look around, ask those meaningful questions you were just talking about, and then we're going to be on the right track. So it makes sense. Well, hey, man, I have hoped that the folks listening to this episode enjoyed it because certainly, as I was saying to you previously, project management somehow falls to the wayside for things, but it is so valuable for everything that we do. So I really appreciate the fact that you wrote this book coming on this show. First podcast, by the way. So I think you crushed it for your first podcast. Gotta say that right now. So that's been awesome. Where can people go to learn more about you, to follow your work, everything else? Where can they find you online?
Yeah, very active or trying to be very active on LinkedIn. That's one of the best place for me right now. Trying to grow to have a platform, but LinkedIn will be the best place. And the book right now is available on Amazon. So that's the place. I'm trying also to expand to other publishers, not publishers, but other ways of selling the book. If they come, once I'm able to do that, I will add that to LinkedIn so that people have different ways to access the book. So
Awesome. Well, I'll be sure to include all those links inside of the show notes for everything. Once again, man, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a blast. Appreciate it.
thank you, Luke. It's been a real pleasure.
A big thank you to Guieswende for coming on the show. And if you have not yet followed him, folks, on LinkedIn, be sure to do so. He is posting some great content about project management and instructional design lately. A lot of good stuff. So make sure that you are following him. And as you could probably tell, too, from this episode, he's just a super kind and nice human being, which is always great to be able to have people on the podcast who are not just knowledgeable, but are also just kind and decent people. And when I, myself and my wife, we were going through everything with having our daughter, Riley, he was always checking in on me, asking how things were going, and kind of reminding me about how amazing it is to be a dad. And just once again, just a nice, great person. So being able to highlight and to spotlight those kind of people on this show is something that I'm all about, and also why I'm so thrilled to have our learning nerd community. You really can't beat instructional designers. At the end of the day, I have to say, we are filled with a lot of really great and nice people who want to be able to help out others. So it's always awesome to be able to have those kind of folks come on the show. And of course, if you liked today's podcast episode, give it a 5-star rating wherever you are listening. So many of you listen to the show and so many of you do not leave it a rating, which once again, not complaining. I'm glad so many of you like the podcast, but the more reviews that you can give, the better it helps out the show to be able to grow because of that type of engagement and the algorithm and all that fun stuff. So if you are enjoying these podcast episodes, please be sure to give it a review wherever you are listening. And that, my friends, is all that I have for you today. Stay nerdy out there. I'll talk to you next time.